So very warm welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the opportunity to join today. And if we are comfortable, it would be good if we want to keep our video on. It will be nice to see each other. And I'll be just reading out a few things here, and then we can take our opportunity to reflect upon them. Yeah. So I actually uh, came across this little book. It may be inverted for you. It's by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's called No Mud, No Lotus. And specifically, it draws my attention because I take a course on pain and suffering via Pondicherry, Sri Aurobindo Center for Advanced Research. And since suffering is a field which interests me, and all of us human beings have suffering of some or the other sort, I thought to buy this book. So I bought this book, and it's a very simple little book, and not very expensive also, not promoting it to for you to buy it, but just that the language in which it is written, it's a very simple language, not really complicated, very layman language, and also very simple resolutions for the suffering, which seems very commonsensical. So I thought I'll just share what I read, which I found very, very beneficial. And let us see how, we, if we have questions and doubts, and maybe we want to reflect upon it, then we can, share our reflections and doubts. So I'll just read a few things from here and there, and then we'll pause in between and we can share our reflections or doubts. So it starts with, we all want to be happy, and there are many books and teachers in the world that try to help people be happier. Yet we all continue to suffer. Therefore, we may think that we are doing it wrong. This is a very common perception that maybe mere se nahi ho raha, I am doing something wrong. Therefore, we may think that we are doing it wrong. Somehow we are failing at happiness. And he says that isn't true. Being able to enjoy happiness doesn't require that we have zero suffering. Now, this is very, very powerful, because all of us have suffering or some or the other sort, physical suffering, a bit of mental, emotional suffering. So he says that being able to enjoy happiness doesn't require that we have zero suffering. In fact, the art of happiness is also the art of suffering well. I think we'll come to it, how to suffer well. Yeah. When we learn to acknowledge, embrace, and understand our suffering, we suffer much less. Most of the times, even in my own experiences, I see that suffering may be there, and then there is something in me which is resisting the suffering. I don't want you. Why are you here again? So it's more the resistance that causes the, increases the suffering. While if I just say, okay, I see that a bit of suffering is there, I pacify the suffering, like a stubborn child or a crying child who comes to you, and if you just hold the child, embrace the child is okay, really, he may cry for a little longer. But when the crying child comes to you and you resist his crying, that, oh my God, why on earth are you crying? That intensifies the suffering. So he's saying very powerful, very simple yet very powerful, that when we learn to acknowledge, embrace our suffering and understand our suffering, we suffer much less. So you are not becoming like a brick wall in the flow of the Ganges. You are allowing it to be. Not only that, but we are also able to go further and transform our suffering into understanding. So the more I am understanding towards my suffering, the more I can actually empathize with other people who may be suffering around me. That you may have seen, whenever we go through pain, we become empathetic to others' people pain also. Yeah. And then he says, not only that, but we are also able to go further and transform our suffering to understanding, compassion, joy for ourselves and others. So I think this is very powerful, because mostly we look down on people who are suffering, people who may be in depression or even, minute day-to-day suffering. But then when we see the opportunity that suffering offers, then it completely changes the picture. So this, if I am going through suffering, it makes me available to be compassionate. Otherwise we lack compassion in our lives. If somebody is coming out with rage and anger on me, usually I react with rage. But if I am in a compassionate place, I'll be able to understand how much the other person would be suffering, that he's so much angry or, in suffering himself. So compassion arises. Yeah, very, very powerful. Then he says, but the art of happiness is also at the same time the art of knowing how to suffer well. So there is no problem with suffering. All human beings suffer at one or the other level, but how to suffer well. If we know how to use our suffering, we can transform it and suffer much less. So we need not resist and prolong the suffering. Rather, the moment I recognize it, I use it in order to transform it. That, okay, what is the opportunity that this suffering places in front of me? Knowing how to suffer well is the essential to realizing true happiness. And according to Thich Nhat Hanh in this book, he says that just like right cannot exist without left, happiness cannot exist without suffering. And when you may hear about people or masters who have earlier been in depression for many, many years, and now even a normal, regular life is so joyous for them, which is not really joyous for us usually, because they have been through that much of suffering. And now they recognize that, oh my God, I am alive, I am breathing. That itself is so much of joy. So that is the contrast that he brings up in this book. And at any moment of time, if anyone feels like sharing, please do unmute and share. We'll take up reflections and questions in between. Yeah. And then he says, just on the example of left and right, without right, left cannot be, without left, right cannot be. And then he says, if we can learn to see and skillfully engage with both the presence of happiness and the presence of suffering, we will go in the direction of enjoying life more. So even the day-to-day, daily, mundane life actually is not mundane anymore. It's full of vibrance because you have suffered so much. Because you have suffered so much, that's why you realize the importance of this breath that is still moving, your limbs which you can easily move, your loved ones who may not be really loving you, but they're around you. We don't recognize that importance. And he gives a beautiful example here. He says, cold air can be painful if you aren't wearing enough warm clothes. But when you are feeling overheated, or you are walking outside with proper clothing, the bracing sensation of cold air can be a source of feeling joy and aliveness. I'm sure all of us have felt that, that whenever we are full in sweater and jacketed, too much warm already, then if a pleasant air comes, it actually soothes us, we enjoy it. So again, the contrast, because I am wearing warm clothes, hence I am able to enjoy the cool breeze. And especially the winter sun is always so enjoyable, that since it is winters, it's so chilly, hence the warmth of the sun is so very welcome. So the contrast is so important. There might be things that cause you to suffer, such as loud music or bright lights, which may bring other people joy. Just like if I see my own family, my little children, they like to play loud drums and they enjoy it at times. But I am saying like, no. So for them, it's joy. But for me, it may be pain, right? So again, the contrast. There are things that bring you joy that annoy other people. The rainy day that ruins your plans for a picnic is a boon for the farmer whose field is parched. So it's beautiful to see the utility of the opposites. Mother and Sri Aurobindo also share, Mother specifically shares on suffering is there, but can you use the intensity of suffering to go within and, find a deeper self and live from there? utilize the suffering. It's okay to suffer, but suffer well. And then he says, happiness is possible right now, today, but happiness cannot be without suffering. Some people think that in order to be happy, they must avoid all suffering, so that they are constantly vigilant, constantly worrying, that something or the other may happen. They end up sacrificing all their spontaneity, freedom, and joy. This isn't correct. If you can recognize and accept your pain without running away from it, you will discover that although pain is there, joy can also be there at the same time. No, I think it's very, very powerful, because I have been through phases myself, which have been full of intense suffering. And owing to those phases, now I am able to appreciate the normal, regular life, more what I could earlier appreciate. The little joys of life, the sun, the air, and maybe cooking for someone, which in the regular day-to-day life may become a very big, burden on the head, that why do I have to cook for everyone every day, but when you lose something and get something back, then it's a different gift. Just like that story, I think, from Osho's Treasury, he shares one story that there was a king who came to a sadhu and he said that, I have so much of wealth, but I'm not happy. Give me happiness. So the sadhu said that, okay, bring all your treasure in one big bag and come tomorrow. And he brings all the treasure that he has in one big bag, and he comes to the sadhu, and the sadhu takes the bag and runs. Now he's running and running and running, and the king also runs after him, because it's all the treasure that he had. So after a few villages, when they had ran, he stops and he gives the treasure back. And now he has a sigh of relief, and he feels very joyous, very happy. And the sadhu shares that you already had that. we already have a beautiful life, but it's just that the mind overwhelms so much at many times, that it feels that always something is lacking, always something is lacking, and we are not able to enjoy what is already there. Yeah, so anything at the moment, any reflection, any sharing, if you want to share anything, personal reflection. Okay, else I'll just go on, keep reading on.
So Monica,
yeah, please.
I think so I've had experiences where I feel, or at least I've observed, I don't know how far it is this thing, but I think there are also individuals who find the joy in suffering. I think it becomes like a little of the self-sacrificing, this thing. So which yes, has taken me some time to come to empathy in that, even find empathy with that also. So which was quite which was quite strange for me, but now I've come to understand that part also. I think and there's no understanding actually. It's just that you empathize. If this is what they want, then this is what they want, so. But yes, sometimes you still question it a bit, but yeah, I think the intensity of it has come down.
Yeah, beautiful. Yes. So I'm just going on then in that case. And please, as Nandini shared, whenever we have any reflection, we can put it forward. If you look deeply into a flower, you see that a flower is made only of non-flower elements. In that flower, there is a cloud. Of course, we know a cloud isn't a flower, but without a cloud, a flower can't be. If there is no cloud, there is no rain, and no flower can grow. You don't have to be a dreamer to see a cloud floating in a flower. So this actually, when I was reading this, I remembered that once I was in mountains, up in the mountains, and I was just, maybe it was a meditative kind of a retreat, and I was there sitting looking at the mountains, and suddenly I saw, where does this mountain end and where does the rock or the air begin? As if there was no distinction. So how can you differentiate between the tree? Where does the tree end? Where does the mountain start? What is the rock? How separate is the rock? How separate is the sand? And how separate are the air which is touching the rocks? So as if everything was one with each other, and yet, just for the sake of calling, we call this conical piece of thing a mountain, which includes the air, which includes the sand, which includes the rock, which includes the air touching it, the greenery, the animals living on it are also the mountain. So I think this is beautiful to see the interconnection, and how the limited conceptual mind has to label it in a way which appears very separative. So for example, I can say I end here and this book starts here. It's very easy to say, but is that true? Even if you look at it physically, physics, from the movement of science, from the matter of science, you would see that there is a constant exchange between my fingers and the book. Like electrons and neutrons, they are moving, the energy is moving. So there is actually not this hard border that appears to be right here. So he's saying that, where does the flower end and where does the cloud begin? It's as if there is a continuity. Yeah, I'll go further. If we continue to look deeply into the flower, we see many other things like the earth and the minerals. They are part of the flower. They are not separate from it. Without them, a flower cannot be. So it's a fact that a flower is made only of non-flower elements. A flower can't be by herself alone. A flower can only interbe with everything else. And I think when we look at ourselves as human beings, we are one with the earth, we are one with the sun touching us, we are one with the persons who may be our enemies. We are one with them. We are not separate from them. We are one with the chemicals that go into the earth when, on the farmland, pesticides are used. And that's why compassion towards earth, because whatever we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. So if I'm compassionate towards my own self, I cannot be non-compassionate towards the earth. Yeah, please. Anandini, you want to share?
Yeah, I think that's what you bring up. Just a couple of days, there was this very nice sort of snippet of a little passage, and how she says that, you are made of, so many trillion cells, and you are the, you are the dragonfly, you are the butterfly, you are everything. And it just takes an egg and a sperm to make you, because then it's just part of it. And then towards the end, she says there is no there's like, you're not born on earth, you are earth. And therefore, so that was like what you were trying to say, right? There's no distinguish between you, and you're not separate from it, because you are just made up of all these minerals that
Yeah, I think that's why they say appearances deceive. Because the bodily form that we have, it appears through the senses, limited perception of the senses, that this is where I end and this is where you begin. And that is the cause of all misery. The India ends here, Pakistan starts here. That's the cause of all misery, all the wars, because of that. To preserve those boundaries which actually are not even there. Such stupidity on a very global level. But that's how we are. And I think each one of us has to change before talking about nations. Yeah. Yeah, anyone else? Anything to share here?
In fact, yesterday when it was, I think yesterday was Guru Nanak's birthday, right? So, not to offend anyone or sort of this thing, but I think it's one of the, I don't know if you want to call it religion, but lack of a better word. I mean, that's the only one that has actually said that before you become sort of a Hindu or a Sikh or a, you know, whatever Muslim, you need to be a human being to sort of, you know, go ahead, right? And then you can, I mean, I don't know whether you want to classify or whatever, but yeah, that's where you need to first become that to go beyond, then to call yourself a particular religion if you want to. So.
Yeah, Kalpana ji, you're muted. Yes. Now.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I was just, you know, there is physical suffering, right? And I don't know if you're going to take that up or we are going to talk about it. And then there is mental and emotional, you know. Now, mental and emotional, I mean, by God's grace, I think by the divine grace, I mean, if I look at others, you know, I have led such an unsuffered life, though I have gone through phases. So I feel, you know, that this emotional suffering that we have, or what our mind feels, or what our emotions feel, that is something that we can, you know, by understanding through the mind, you know, that why we are suffering, and why this is such a silly thing, or it's just a stupid thing that we need not have suffered so much about, you know. So for the mental and the physical, the mental and the emotional aspects, I think, I mean, I'm talking about my experience. It's my experience of life, whatever I have. So then when I look back, I think, oh, I should not have. I mean, it was not that that important, or it was, you know, it was the way I was looking at that issue, or it was my deficiency. So you can work on that. And I feel at a particular stage in life, at least I'm talking about myself, then you realize that, okay, you know, these emotional sufferings that you have, or these mental sufferings that you have, I'm talking of a middle class person in India, I'm talking like that. I'm not talking of, say, a prisoner of war, or I'm not talking of those kind of, you know, situations. I'm talking of somebody like, so they seem something that are solvable. They could have been solvable even at that situation, but it did not happen because of whatever reasons, which I'm also to blame. But I really don't know about physical suffering, you know, because again, by the divine grace, I have not had those kind of experiences. But physical suffering for pain, maybe, and yeah, and many things that the body has, you know, that a lot of people, when they have ailments, they have a lot of pain, or a lot of discomfort, like maybe they're throwing up all the time, or maybe they need to, you know, go to the washroom. I mean, you know, these kind of things, I don't know how can you look at them, how can you understand them, how can you not let that suffering touch you and make you into a, because I have seen, like, for instance, I have this issue of being fatigued a lot of the time, right? So it's a physiological problem, and I'm working on it. I'm taking whatever medicines or whatever has to be done. But I have observed that whenever I'm fatigued and I'm not, then I turn very, I get upset. My moods are not the same. My thoughts are something different. And when I'm physically okay, like if today I'm good, I'm feeling good about myself, I'm not feeling fatigued. So a simple thing, I mean, this is not even pain. This is not even some tension that you're waiting for a medical report to come, and you know, you don't know what will come in that. It's not even that kind of a real tension. It's just a fatigue, right? And that can actually make me, you know, cranky and upset. So I was just thinking, how can you, these kind of physical things that you know, real, how do you, I mean, I feel it's next to impossible to actually come to terms with it. Yeah, that is what I wanted to share. Sorry for being so long about taking a lot of your time.
Not at all. No, this is what we are here for. So please don't feel sorry for it. Most welcome. Such reflections are most welcome. physical.
Monica, may I say something?
Yeah, obviously. Yes, Sulakshana, please. Yeah.
I just wanted to add to what Kalpana ji, was that her name? What she said just now, because I so empathize with what she said towards the end. I'm going through really bad pains right now, and it seems long term, whatever it is, with the back issue. And it's so tangible. Physical pain is so tangible. So sometimes, I mean, no matter how much you read, no matter how much you listen, no matter how much you try and say it's all in the mind, and yet there are so often, it becomes so difficult to not go ahead and seek in future make what if. You're trying not to. Okay, I'm trying to stay in the present moment, but I'm trying. If I am able to help make myself understood, it's right now difficult, painful, and I'm not able to let go of what the mind is saying. So how does one handle that? It's so tangible, the physical pain.
Yes.
So what would you say?
Yeah.
Your work would really help. I've been really listening to your Kabir's sayings, and they've been helping me. I can't deny that. Every session of yours has really been helping me. But I just wanted your views on this.
Yeah. So I think only the one who is going through pain knows the pain, right? And pains are of several kinds. If I have been through cancer, I cannot say that the other person who is going through cancer, I know what he is going through. I cannot say that, because what he or she may be going through may be completely different from what I went through. So pain is pain, and it is there. First of all, to acknowledge it, validate it, that yes, it is there. I have pain. And physical pain, as you were, Kalpana ji and Sulakshana ji were sharing, it is the ultimate test actually of our practice, physical pain. I mean, all the practice that we may have been doing, and we may have been thinking that, okay, I am an adept at meditation now and I can go through everything. But the moment physical pain or something in the tooth may come up, you are again broken and shattered. And yet something in us does not shatter. Something in us does not shatter. So that something in us, which we all are aware of, which does not shatter, I think to cling to that in whatever way, there may be many tools possible. I have shared many tools in my workshops, whatever, I share. But whatever tool kind of resonates with each one of us, to make that practice when the good times are there. Because I cannot imagine that severe back pain is here and now I'm able to go through it very well. I'm still not saying that, that it's any matter of adept or your practice that you are able to go through a pain very well. The pain may be overwhelming, and all the practice may go to drain. It doesn't matter. If I have to go through, I have to go through. What can I do about it? But the only thing is, I particularly in my own life also, and in whatever sharing I do, I share that when the good times are there, when you don't have the pain, then practice. And by practice, I mean, in this recent workshop on vital nature also, for those of us inclined, I can actually share the recordings. The practice, I mean that knowing yourself, that you are not the thought, you're not the feelings, you're not the sense perceptions, but the awareness of all of that. Now, you cannot imagine to do it in the middle of a chaos. It won't happen. Kabir said, dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. Jo sukh mein sumiran kare, good times, remembering your true nature, knowing your true nature, living as that. Jo sukh mein sumiran kare, then he says, to dukh kahe ka hoye. And the only dukh is living as a separate self. That's the only dukh actually. All the physical pains I can go through, no matter how much shattering is happening. Yet the suffering because of the pain would not be there. The pain will be there. I will be broken, shattered, but I won't be suffering because of the pain. At least there we can reach with practice. So I think karat karat abhyas ke jadmati ot sujan, the only thing we can do is abhyas, practice to be who we truly are in whatever way suits us, so that in the good times I stabilize, and when an overwhelming time comes, then I can test myself, okay, ki hum kitne pani mein hai. So there is no other way. There is no other way, and each pain is special. One has to go through it. And also praying. We will, towards the end of this session also, we will dedicate the session, pray, that all the virtue from the session may it go to all the infinite number of beings that are suffering like us. And everybody wants to be happy. So praying, I think no one can really downplay the effect of prayer. It's a very, very strong effect, a true prayer, an intense prayer. Yeah. We have to go through it. There is no shortcut here for each one of us. And I think that's how we mature. That's how we ripen, and that's how we relate with each other. Why this topic of suffering resonated with so many of us? Because we have suffered, haven't we? And hence we understand each other's pain. So it connects us. Otherwise, you are in your own family, I happy with my own kids. Who wants to talk to whom? Doesn't matter. But if we are suffering, oh, you also have suffered, I also have suffered. This is what I learned. Okay, this is what you learned. So this connects. This is a connecting thing, I believe. Yeah. If anyone wants to add on or share anything from their experience. So shall I go ahead, continue with the reading? Yeah. So then he says, no mud, no lotus. If you look, I think I already shared about the flower thing. The mud doesn't smell so good, but the lotus flower smells very good. So the suffering, ugliness doesn't smell so good. The pain does not smell so good. But when I arise out of it, the compassion it gives me, the kindness it gives me towards other people's pain, I think that smells nice. That smells nice, that kindness and empathy. So the mud doesn't smell so good, but the lotus flower smells very good. If you don't have mud, the lotus won't manifest. You can't grow lotus flowers on marble. Without mud, there can be no lotus. It is possible, of course, to get stuck in the mud of life. It's easy enough to notice mud all over you at times. The hardest thing to practice is not allowing yourself to be overwhelmed by despair. When you are overwhelmed by despair, all you can see is suffering everywhere you look. When we are in depression, look, everybody is suffering so much of sadness. That happens, we mirror our own beingness. You feel as if the worst thing is happening to you. But we must remember that suffering is a kind of mud that we need in order to generate joy and happiness. Without suffering, there is no happiness. And this is the happiness which we already actually have every day. But since I'm so engaged in my stories in the head, I don't even recognize that I am breathing and I'm alive and my limbs are active. I'm functional. I can cook. I can serve others. So much of blessing is already there, but I don't recognize it. But when I suffer and I get all of this back, there was this story where one of our friends had a fracture in his leg, and when the fracture was healed and everything got okay, he said that I felt like dancing. Now the same two legs were there that he had before, but now he's able to recognize the importance of having two functional legs. So we should not discriminate against the mud, not to shoo away the suffering. Also not to invite suffering also. Not that I'm ruminating in my thoughts and inviting more and more emotional and mental suffering, not like that. But if suffering is there, not resisting it, but letting it be and going through the process. We have to learn how to embrace and cradle our own suffering and the suffering of the world with a lot of tenderness. Usually we are very judgmental and critical about what the other people are doing. But if I have suffered well, not really suffered, but suffered well, then the judgment falls away. Then I look at a criminal just exactly I look at myself. There is no judgment. And Angulimal is equivalently capable of being a Buddha as the Buddha himself. So this is the power of suffering well. If you know how to make good use of mud, you can grow beautiful lotuses. If you know how to make good use of suffering, you can produce happiness. We do need some suffering to make happiness possible. And most of us have enough suffering inside and around us to be able to do that. We don't have to create more. So this is what I was sharing, that now that we are talking about suffering, it doesn't, that, oh my God, there is less suffering in my life. Let me create some more poison, in my head. So we don't have to go there, right? So there is enough suffering already, right? The mind is not at peace. That is suffering. The mind is not silent. That is suffering, right? My vital energies are restless all the time. That is suffering. So we have enough of it already. And then he comments on, did the Buddha suffer? So he says, when I was a young monk, I believed that Buddha didn't suffer once he had become enlightened. Naively, I asked myself, what's the use of becoming a Buddha if you continue to suffer? Why should I become enlightened if suffering is still there? The Buddha did suffer because he had a body, feelings, and perceptions like all of us. Sometimes he probably had a headache. Sometimes he suffered from rheumatism. So we are alive, we are not a stone. So some or the other suffering is going to be there. If he happened to eat something not well cooked, then he had intestinal problems. So he suffered physically and he suffered emotionally as well. When one of his beloved students died, he suffered. How can you not suffer when a dear friend has just died? Beautiful, that it just tells us that we just have to be alive. We don't have to shoo away our feelings, shun away our feelings, or become numb. If I am in a Buddha state, I'm not numb. The Buddha wasn't a stone. He was a human being. But because he had a lot of insight, wisdom, and compassion, he knew how to suffer. And so he suffered much less. So I think Nandini was sharing in the beginning, not to prolong our suffering by having the juice in the suffering. We usually, suffering becomes a sense of identity, that who am I if I'm not suffering? So not to go there, but if suffering is there, utilize it well. And then he comes to the 4 noble truths that Buddha gave. The very first teaching the Buddha gave after his enlightenment was about suffering. It's called the 4 noble truths. The Buddha's 4 noble truths are, there is suffering, so the acknowledgement of it, not the denial of it. There is suffering. There is a course of action that generates suffering. So to be vigilant how I am fueling my suffering, how I am giving petrol and diesel to my suffering, to be aware of that. There is suffering, there is a course of action that generates suffering. Suffering ceases, that is, there is happiness, and there is a course of action leading to the cessation of suffering. So to recognize these in our life, that when do I suffer? And mostly if we look, the moment I am suffering, I am clinging to something. I'm clinging to a thought, clinging to a person, clinging to a relationship, clinging to my idea of how life should be, and suffering. So clinging is there. So that's why he said attachment is suffering. Attachment to ideas, opinions, people, fleeting situations that are not really permanent. Yeah. Yeah. Anything at the moment? Anyone? Anything we want to share? It's very good to see many people today who usually do not join but are able to join at this time. Actually, I changed the time today. So very happy to see you all here. Yeah. So I'll just continue. Again, what's coming is really very beautiful. He says about what suffering is made of. There is the suffering of the body, I think, which Sulakshana ji, Kalpana ji was talking about. There is the suffering of the body, including the sensations of pain, illness, hunger, and physical injury. That is suffering. Some of this suffering is simply unavoidable. You eat something, stomach ache happens, and unavoidable. It happens. Then there is suffering of the mind, including anxiety, jealousy, despair, fear, and anger. We have the seeds, the potential in us for understanding, love, compassion, and insight, as well as the seeds of anger, hate, and greed. So seeds are available. Ravan seed is available, Ram seed is available. What do I nurture? Anger is available, compassion is available. What do I nurture? Now here I have free will. We often talk about choice, making a choice, conscious choice. That yes, the outer situation is totally apt that I can be absolutely angry right now. But I don't want to. That's a choice. I don't want to give in to the anger. And, a day before something had happened and I was in a dark kind of a zone. And for about 10 hours, I remained in that zone. And something in me in the 11th hour shifted. And I said to myself, I don't want to be here anymore. I really want to get up and move my ass and do something nice. And immediately the moment I took charge of my happiness, I think the game shifted. No other outer situation was, then making me miserable. So it's us that we allow other things to make ourselves miserable. And the moment I take the charge that I don't want to be miserable, I want to be okay, the games, it happens a shifting within, as if the inward attitude has changed. Something is in charge within that I want to make my life better. Let me take charge of it, not to prolong the suffering unnecessarily. So using that free will. So he says that we have the seeds of love, compassion, understanding. We also have the seeds of anger, hate, and greed. At every moment this is happening, right? At every moment we have all these seeds. While we can't avoid all the suffering in life, we can suffer much less by not watering the seeds of suffering inside us. So I have to be vigilant. How in this moment am I watering the seeds of suffering in my thoughts, in my emotions? We have to be very, very vigilant about that. Kabir often talks about this vigilance, where he says that my house, where I am at rest, is at the top of this mountain, very shiny little peak, where not even a little ant can stand. There I have found rest. So that kind of a vigilance, that the moment you slip, you fall into suffering again, but you are vigilant. You're not feeding the suffering. You're not feeding the suffering. And at times it will happen that unknowingly you will feed the suffering. It happens. We are living in tendencies, old patterns. So we again and again, me and my story comes. But then the moment I have a recognition that I don't want to suffer like this, I take up the charge of my own happiness. I have suffered enough. Now I want to move forward. And then he talks about the body. I think, let me share this because Kalpana ji was talking something on the body. Are you at war with your body? Do you neglect or punish your body? Have you truly gotten to know your body? Can you feel at home with your body? Suffering can be either physical or mental or both, but every kind of suffering manifests somewhere in the body and creates tension and stress. I think this we have all experienced. If we are angry, the chest burns. If we are having desires, the stomach grumbles. So the body is a beautiful indicator of all these emotions. We are told that we should release the tension in our body. Many of us have tried very hard. We want to release the tension in our body, but we can't release it. Our attempts at reducing tension in us won't work unless we first acknowledge that it is there. So not trying to shoo away the tension, but acknowledging the tension. Okay, tension, you are there. Like saying hello to it, not wanting to be rid of it. When you cut your finger, wash it and your body knows how to heal. When a non-human animal living in a forest is injured, she knows what to do. So animals have already this inherent instinct how to take care of themselves. She stops searching for something to eat when she is injured, the animal, or looking for a mate. Now, no reproduction will happen. No food will be hunted because I am ill, I am sick. So let me rest, right? She knows through generations of ancestral knowledge that it is not good for her to do so. She finds a quiet place and just lies down. You must have seen animals, when they are not well, they just quietly lie down. So owing to this inherent instinct that they have, doing nothing. Non-human animals instinctively know that stopping is the best way to get healed. But we don't stop, we take a discipline and move on. So that's the life we have. Yeah, just a second. Yeah, so this, this animal knowing that is there, which we have gotten lost because we are now too much into this artificial lifestyle, which robs us of this inherent instinct that we have, intuitive insight that we have. They don't need a doctor. The animals, they don't need a doctor usually. They don't need a doctor, a drugstore, or a pharmacist because they know how to rest. They know when to rest. But we don't know. We are tired, we are full of fatigue. And I think Kalpana ji was talking about fatigue. And yet I have to do this, I have to do this. We don't rest. As if without us, things are going to really fall and wither away. But that's not so. The first time I went into the hospital, when I had this surgeries to be done in my bladder, that was the first time I realized that I am not the sole doer or caretaker of my little children. Even if I pass away right now, things will be taken care of. So I don't have to stress too much. I can only do whatever I can do. Rest, ask for contribution, and invite other people to also contribute in the work. So otherwise we take too much of responsibility on these shoulders, and then we continue to pop pills so that we can continue to be the doer. So this doership is very heavy on our shoulders. Yeah, anything at this moment? Yeah, I'll just complete this 2 lines here and then we can take reflections. We human beings used to have this kind of wisdom, but we have lost touch with it. We don't know how to rest anymore. Many a times you may have felt whenever we sit or pause to rest, something in us wants to do something, either watch a YouTube or maybe read a book. We just don't know how to rest. We don't know how to rest. This energy, restless energy, is so outward that it does not know how to be just contained. So sitting quietly, just being with the breath or being aware of being aware really helps us settle down with that energy, not like thumping here and there with that energy. So this capacity of truly resting in the body. I think this is something which we have to learn. I think taking inspiration from animals also, who are so beautifully able to rest. Dogs, little dogs, even big dogs, they're just resting. They're okay. I'm being a nobody and I'm okay. Don't want to do anything. So yeah. So let us take any reflections here at this moment. Anyone wants to share anything?
The thing is, Monica, yes, whatever you read just now, I would resonate with it totally, because I think I have really neglected my body. No matter what justifications I give. I mean, there were lots, of course, financial constraints, husband losing job, everything, whatever it was, happens with a lot of people. Very tough times. But I felt as if, I mean, I just have to carry on. I just have to carry on to make my life work, to do everything for the kids. But the fact is that it's done. The neglect has been done. There's not much point in poring over that now. But still, the mind tends to go into that, I wish I had looked after myself better. I wish I had paid attention to my health. And I tell everybody who wishes to talk to me or listen to me, and I tell them, please look after yourself. These old sayings, Jaan hai to jahan hai, they have a world of truth in them. This is the truth. But the fact is, how does one, I mean, whatever you're saying is, reading is all fine, and Thich Nhat Hanh is, of course, one of my favorite authors. But yet, like I said, the mind plays its tricky games. And to use your own word, sticky is the word you love to use. It wants to stick to that thought, I wish I hadn't done this. And oh my God, what's going to happen again?
Yeah.
So
Sulakshana ji,
finding it.
Yeah, the only moment we have,
please carry on.
The only moment we have is the now.
Is now.
Now, when you are saying, I wish I could have done better there, is that being kind to yourself right now? Is an act
No,
of
not really.
kindness.
That's what I said. Theoretically, I understand that.
Yeah, but coming back to the body. Yeah. I'm totally with you. And that's the problem with all of us. I think not only you, that the mind cannot stay in the now. It either wants to rush back to the past or it wants to rush to the future. It does not want to make the right effort right now, because the game will change. We will lose our identity, the sense of self that we have, sense of self, me and my story. We will lose that story. So if right now giving ourselves very little task, it's a very little task. Right now, asking myself that if I am indulging in the past, what I could have done, the regret, am I being kind to myself? Just this mantra. No, this is not kind. Okay, then coming back to the breath. Right now, what can I do for myself, for my body, for being healthy? Is this a healthy thought to perpetuate about a regret of the past or something worry of the future? It's not. It's very clear or obvious that it's not. So let me be kind and compassionate right now, which is the only moment I have right now, and okay, what will I do if I am kind and compassionate towards myself and others right now? Let me act there. So putting all the energy, like a funnel there is, putting all the energy here and now. And just sticking to that. Yes, Kalpana ji.
I can understand what Sulakshana is saying, because that is how even I have gone through the same thing. I wish I had done, not just for health, for various things, health of course. But I'll tell you one thing, when my mind also used to tell me this, I wish I had done that differently. I wish I had done taken care of my health or whatever it was. But I realized that at that stage, I'm just sharing this so that if it makes any sense to Sulakshana ji, I'm just sharing it. That point of time when I behaved in a particular way, maybe let's say I didn't take care of my health, that was what I could have done at that stage of time, with my level of maturity, with my level of, let us say, financial status, or my the state I was in, whatever it is, my childish state, or whatever it was. So that was the only outcome which could have come at that time. Now, with more maturity, or with more understanding, with more with a little more than at that stage, now I can look back and say, oh, I should not have done it. But at that time, that was the only thing I could have done. I don't know, this is the way I have understood it. And once I have accepted that, then I have, as Monica says, then it is here and now. So about health, I can understand this because I was talking about fatigue. So I have realized that I have to kind of stop working. I mean, that was a decision I took. And I have taken a VRS, because though I love my job, because I realized, I was kind of pushing myself. And so right now, I think I took this decision. Now, this is the best decision I have taken at this point of time. This is the only decision I could have taken at this point of time, whatever state I'm in, my physical, mental, financial, no matter what. 5 years later, will I regret it? I don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. But if I do, also, it doesn't matter. I mean, I may think that did I take the right decision? But today, it's the right decision. That is something that has actually helped me a lot. And it's like a miracle, now I don't actually dwell on that कि अरे मैं वो करती, मैं वो नहीं करती, मैं वो बोलती, मैंने क्यों ऐसे बोला, मैंने क्यों वो किया, these things. Then I try to make the amends right now. अच्छा ठीक है, तब वहां वैसे बोला या वैसे किया. That was the condition I was in at that point of time. If I had known any better at that point of time, I would have done better. But I did not know anything better. That is the way I understand, and that is the way I'm at peace with myself. I don't know if it makes any kind of like that. That's how I've
Absolutely, Kalpana ji. Absolutely makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I think very powerful also, because it re-empowers us, that
Yeah, true.
there I had that much of understanding. What can I do right now? So beautiful. Yeah, very, very powerful. Yes. Yeah. Anyone who wants to share more? Yes, Nandini.
No, Monica, I just wanted to, I think this is, in fact, when I saw I hadn't seen the topic earlier, but today I actually looked at it, and I had read this book it's been about, I think, 6 odd years since I read it. But it's so nice to again sort of reflect on it, and yes, over the years his books have really made a lot of difference in many ways, because they're so simple to just sort of understand, and easy, and they're an easy read. So I think what Kalpana was saying, that I think with our given the understanding at that time, or however, right, I mean, things do come into perspective at that point of time when you are addressing it. So I guess there is no, like you said, like there's no about, it's not about the past or the future, it's just then when you sort of come to. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you too for joining. Yes. So let me just, so there's this last page that I want to finish. And after that, obviously, we can continue in the next sessions if people are interested. This whole book we can share. But this chapter I want to maybe, summarize, like we can finish this off today. The main affliction of our modern civilization is that we don't know how to handle the suffering inside us. And we try to cover it up with all kinds of consumption. There are many people who have enormous suffering and they don't know how to handle it. For many people, it starts at a very young age. So why don't schools teach our young people the way to manage suffering? If a student is very unhappy, he can't concentrate and he can't learn. The suffering the suffering of each of us affects others. The more we learn about the art of suffering well, the less suffering there will be in this world. Mindfulness is the best way to be with our suffering without being overwhelmed by it. Mindfulness is the capacity to dwell in the present moment, to know what's happening in the here and now. For example, when we are lifting our two arms, we are conscious of the fact that we are lifting our arms. And usually we just do like tuck, 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 and we are not even aware. So he's saying that just be consciously. I think there's this small story where I think Buddha was giving a sermon and a fly came by. So he just kind of randomly did that. And then after the fly had already gone, he did it again. So one of the disciples asked that, why did you do that again? And he said that earlier I wasn't mindful. So I now did it mindfully. So, with an art, actually. To be mindful means to be aware. It's the energy that knows what is happening in the present moment. Lifting our arms and knowing that we are lifting our arms. That's mindfulness. When we breathe in and we know we are breathing in, that's mindfulness. When we make a step and we know that the steps are taking place, we are mindful of the steps. Mindfulness is always mindfulness of something. So it's still a dualistic state, like there are still the observer and the observed, but it's a beautiful state because at least this detachment is there, that I'm aware of something. So the awareness is there. It's energy that helps us to be aware of what's happening right now, right here, in our body, in our feelings, in our perceptions, and around us. With mindfulness, you can recognize the presence of suffering in you and in the world. And it's with that same energy that you tenderly embrace the suffering. So if I'm aware of something, only then I can hold it. So to completely be mindful of the suffering and then to embrace it, hold it. We can even go further and make good use of suffering to generate energy of understanding and compassion that heals us, and we can help others to heal and be happy as well. Yeah. Okay, Kalpana ji, thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing your reflections. The last part, which I'm going to read now, is he talks about generating mindfulness. The way we start producing the medicine of mindfulness is by stopping, taking a conscious breath, giving our complete attention to our in-breath and our out-breath. When we stop and take a breath in this way, breathing is already happening every day, but when we consciously breathe, we unite the body and the mind and come back home to ourselves. So usually when the mind is always me, my story, past, future, there. So the moment I take 4 conscious breaths or 20, 11, whatever conscious breaths, the mind comes back home to the body. I'm back here right now. The great news is that oneness of the body and mind can be realized but by just one in-breath. So we don't have to count 100 in-breaths. Just one in-breath, conscious breath, and I'm here. I'm home. Yeah, and just the last paragraph. If we take care of the suffering inside us, we have more clarity, energy, strength to help address the suffering, violence, poverty, and inequity of our loved ones as well as the suffering in our community and in the world. If, however, we are preoccupied with the fear and despair in us, we can't help remove the suffering of others. All of us want to help, but we don't know how to help. So if I don't help my own suffering, how can I help anyone else? There is an art to suffering well. If we know how to take care of our suffering, we not only suffer much less, we also create more happiness around us and in the world. So all of this, again, very, very simple words, and very, very powerful. Like if we really make them a mantra in our life, it really can make a difference. Just a discipline need to be there. Yeah. Yeah. Any reflection at this moment? Anyone? So in case of absence of reflection, we can also do this dedication, which I was sharing in the beginning, that whatever we have shared, we would, in the satsang today, may the virtue of it go to all the infinite number of beings. Yes, Nandini, you wanted to share something, please?
No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else want to share at this moment before we do the dedication?
Hi,
Yes.
Mamita.
Yeah. Hi, Aisha. Yeah. Good to see you.
Beautiful your sessions.
Yeah.
It really touched my heart when I heard the first line that you sent in the message, that we all suffer, but we have to learn how to suffer well.
Mm.
Is my intent? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little wobbly. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I started on the path a decade ago, I think my get rid of all the suffering. But over the years, I understood that it's not about that at all. It's about learning how to endure, learning how to suffer well. Am I audible?
Yeah, a little cracky, but yes, audible. Yes, Aisha, please go forward. Yeah.
Okay, if it's not too audible, then I'll just wrap it up saying thank you so much for
No,
this.
don't
This
wrap it up.
really
We want to listen to you. Please, you speak so little, so please do speak.
it's only that I think pain. I read this line long time back, and it would be from Buddha, that pain is inevitable. There is nothing that we can do about it, but suffering is optional. So if we just give acceptance, if we just shelter that suffering and not try to run away from it, not try to resist it, I think then it also brings a lot of joy, and it also gives so much depth. I think that's what creates the lotus. I have been experiencing a lot of pain inside, and I just acknowledge it. I accept it. And the moment I accept it, there's no resistance. I can go on living, and there's more to offer. There's more I can offer to others. And another thing that really helps me suffer well is to give up the suffering to the one, that it's all yours. In the past, whatever I did wasn't me. Right now, whatever I'm doing is not me. All my good action, bad action, if I just literally every second of my life, if I can remind myself of giving up that doership, then even the suffering is not mine. I think that really helps. That's it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Aisha is joining from Ladakh. She's at the moment in Ladakh, and she is really, I mean, the amount of pain one has gone through and the beauty the pain gives you, I think that is very, very visible with Aisha. So thank you so much for joining. Yeah. And
Thank you,
sharing.
Madhu.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think good that you spoke, because it's a perfect way to end, that we can see the lotus which can come from the mud. Yeah. No, I'm really, I'm serious about it. Yeah. Thank you so much for your presence. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining. Yeah, and if anyone would like to read the dedication, that would be really nice. I'll just put it on the shared screen. If any one of you can kind of read the dedication in front of you.
I dedicate all the virtue I have gathered throughout the 3 times, along with the virtue of the victorious ones, the Bodhisattvas and all beings, following in the footsteps of the Buddha and the to the lasting happiness of all the infinite number of beings.
Thank you so much. So this is something which I learned from these Buddhist gatherings, that whenever they have a satsang, they dedicate the virtue of satsang to all the infinite number of beings. I think that's something very powerful, not to keep the sacredness to your own little self, but to dedicate it to everyone. Yeah. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining today. And if we wish, we can also continue once in a while, read this book and continue the book and sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Monica.
you so much,
Thank you,
Monica.
madam.
That would be very nice.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Yeah.
everyone. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.